Greetings, YouTubians, and welcome back to Wayne Sharp World, where today I have another episode brought to you guys by Blade Apps. Be sure to look them up for all things sharp, and be sure to click that link in the description below, hop on over and check out their excellent selection of EDC knives and gear. Now, what we have today here are a couple Bokers that I thought looked pretty good, and I wanted to get them over here and check them out, and I'm pretty glad I did. What we have here is the Boker Plus connector and the Boker Plus connector Titan. As you can see, there's a couple differences here. We're going to go over these and talk about both of them in pretty good detail and just give you guys my thoughts on what I think of these two. But before we do that, let's take a look at some overall specs on these knives right here. We have an overall length of 7 inches with a blade length coming in at 3 inches and a blade width right around 870 thousandths. We have a blade thickness coming in at 120 thousandths, and blade material, this is where things get a little different. Actually, the blade length is slightly different too. We got 2.9 inches on the Drop Point Titan version and 3 inches on the Wharncliffe G10 version. But when it comes to blade material, on the G10 version, we are looking at D2, and on the titanium version, we are looking at S35VN. So a significant difference in overall materials used on these two knives, even though they have a lot of similarities as well. As you can see, the blade style on the titanium version is a drop point, and the blade style on the G10 version is a Wharncliffe. They have it listed as a clip point on the website, but I am pretty sure, I at least would consider this a Wharncliffe, so we're calling it a Wharncliffe. Blade grind on both of these are a flat grind with a handle length coming in at 4 inches, and the handle on these are pretty much identical. The only difference is obviously the frame lock and the materials used. Handle thickness coming in at 430 thousandths with a handle width at 890 thousandths. Handle material on these guys, as you can see, obviously, G10 titanium, and of course, liner lock or frame lock, pick your poison. Both are right hand only, tip up carry. Weight for the G10 version is 2.6 ounces, and weight on the titanium version is 2.9 ounces. Now, these are designed by, I'm going to give this my best shot here, Jacob Wzorkiewicz of Poltergeist Works. I'm sure a lot of you know of Poltergeist Works. I believe that may have been the first time I've actually seen the actual name of someone from Poltergeist Works. Usually, sometimes they will just say designed by Poltergeist Works, but regardless, very attractive design in my opinion, and prices coming in at $84 for the connector and $150 for the connector Titan. So there's all your specs, and let's take a look at some size comparisons real quick. We'll get these guys lined up on the squares and got a couple to check them with. As you can see, there's just that very, very slight difference in overall length between the two. And let's pull out the Civivi Elementum. And let's also pull out, what do we got here? What do we got? Here we go. The QSP Penguin. I think that will pretty much do it for size comparisons. Everyone knows how big these knives are, and I think the Elementum gives a really good idea of just what we have here. So let's get into these knives. Let's talk about the differences, the similarities, what I like, what I don't like, and let's get our valet tray back here on the table, and let's go. Let's start with the blade. I really personally do enjoy both of these blade shapes. I think they both look great, and I do slightly favor the Wharncliffe version just because I just like the lines on it just a little better. But both blades really are nice, and from an aesthetic standpoint, look very good in my opinion. Both have good thinness behind the edge, which is a little surprising. I don't come across a lot of slicey Bokers, but these are both really good in terms of edge thinness. We have 19 thousandths on the titanium version and 16 thousandths on the G10 version, so pretty impressive there. What's not impressive, unfortunately, is, let me see if I can get some of these in the picture here. If you look along the edge, it's kind of hard to see right now. You can actually see them better if you're in a dark room that doesn't have good lighting. You can kind of see a little of them there. Both of these blades have some small burrs on them. So while they are thin edges, they're not exactly the smoothest edges. Now, that's not the end of the world. You can, of course, always just take a strap, touch it up with a stone, whatever you prefer. you can do that, but of course, when you're buying a brand new knife out of the box, you shouldn't have to do that. So take that for what it's worth. But these do both have a few small burrs that I noticed got caught on paper and stuff as I was running through a few minor cut tests. So, yeah, not ideal, but worth noting. One thing that I really do like about these blades, and a lot of people may disagree with me on this, but I really like these thumb discs. I personally am a fan of thumb discs. Now, do I prefer thumb studs over thumb discs? Yes, I do. But it's never bad to change things up sometimes, and these actually do work pretty darn good. One works a little better than the other. We'll get to that when we get to the action. But they are both middle finger flickable, and they both work very well. It's not really that hard. You can slow roll them pretty good. They're wide enough to where they're pretty easy to access, and I do like the vibes it kind of gives out on this knife. I think obviously thumb studs would have been hard to crunch in there with the limited space. So I think thumb discs are a nice touch on this one. I really do like them. One thing that I don't exactly love on either one of these blades as well is the plunge grind. It's kind of mediocre. It's not terrible, but I wouldn't consider it good. But of course, you know, plunge grinds are something that I don't think are looked at super heavily yet. I think as things continue to get more competitive within the industry, which they already are, extremely competitive, I think you're going to see the quality of plunge grinds improving. At least I hope so, because it is nice to see a good thin plunge grind. Now going into the handle and ergos, these are both pretty good in that category as well. Some may consider them slightly neutral. What I really like about them is just the overall lines on the handle. I personally think both of these knives give a pretty good gentleman's vibe. I don't think they're like ultimate gentleman's carries, but I think they would work very well as a gentleman's carry. The clip on these guys, I personally like the clip. Now, I have some calluses on my hand that I can kind of feel are protecting from this area right here. So I don't consider it a hot spot, but I could see some people maybe feeling this area and being like, I don't know how much I like that. So kind of take that for what it's worth. Everyone's hand is going to feel a knife differently once they actually get it in their own hand. So it's hard for me to really tell you exactly what you're going to feel. But in terms of the actual handle profile, I think it's good. It feels really nice in my hand, and I personally don't have any hot spots from the handle or the clip. And I do just like this clip in general. It's kind of the reverse screw thing they got going on here. So it looks nice and clean. It is deep carry, everything's recessed, so I like that. And it's just a very simple clip too. It's going to look pretty nice in the pocket. I also like the backspacers on both of these. They're both pretty much the same backspacer with just a little different finish on each one, but I just like the look of them. You know, it's a nice way to incorporate a lanyard hole and add a little bit of extra little flair and detail towards the back of the handle. So like those both. Also worth noting on the titanium handle, this is very much similar to the finish on, say, like a Chris Reeve Sebenza. So now, that's where the comparisons stop when it comes to a Chris Reeve Sebenza. This is nothing like a Sebenza, but the finish on the titanium is very much like that. You will start to notice snail trails and stuff as you carry this and use it, which is fine. It's really not a big deal. Kind of gives the knife a little character, but worth noting there. And then another thing that I really don't like on the titanium version, you get a little sloppy up here by the lock bar insert. It doesn't quite line up with the actual frame lock, as you can see there. And it's kind of an area where, depending on how you're holding the knife and what type of pressure you're applying, that could get maybe a little annoying there in terms of it could maybe scratch you or just be kind of an aggressive spot that you may not enjoy very much. So that's the little details that you gotta pay attention to. But yeah, you definitely do feel that, and I just really don't like how they don't line up, how the lock bar insert does not line up with the frame lock. That's a little sloppy there. But outside of that, that is basically these handles. They're pretty simple, not a whole lot going on, but I do think overall they look good with just a little things to touch up on the titanium version. I do actually prefer the G10 version better because I do prefer this liner lock over the frame lock, and that has a lot more to do with action. But definitely prefer this liner lock with a very good lockup indeed, inset liner. So they got a lot of good things going on with this D2 version, except for the D2 steel, which we'll talk about a little later towards the end of the review. But now let's get into the action. And I will say, out of the box, the action on the G10 version is significantly better. As you can see, middle finger flicking this is very, very enjoyable. Very smooth action. You can regular thumb flick it too, and they both feel really good, and the thumb discs excel very, very well and are just really enjoyable. Now, when you get to this titanium version, it's not bad, but there is a much longer, I would call it break-in period with this one, to where I don't think I've actually got it yet, but it's just a little stiffer. It is noticeably stiffer out of the box, and you can middle finger flick it. You just gotta, it takes a little getting used to, especially when a knife is a little stiffer and you're working with a thumb disc. It takes a little, just, getting familiar with the knife, but it is very doable. But yeah, this one is definitely, if you're a huge, titanium fan and you want to get the titanium version, expect a break-in period with this, and it would probably be a good idea to add a little, maybe a little extra KPL, a little extra lube. But even with this one, the action isn't bad. It's definitely not bad, but it's not anything close to the G10 version out of the box, and it just takes some getting used to. So yeah, take that for what it's worth. Like I said, I do significantly prefer the action of the G10 model out of the box, so just because it is smoother. The liner lock design works a lot better with the handle design for this knife, at least. So I do like that a lot better. Now, overall thoughts on these two. Where are we sitting, and which one would I recommend? This is the problem. So I do prefer, overall, in terms of action aesthetics, I do prefer the regular connector version with the G10 and D2. The problem with that is I'm not a fan of paying $80 for D2. Now, I also understand there's the designer fee that goes in there, because Poltergeist Works is in my opinion, a pretty renowned, knife maker that I think, is pretty highly regarded within the community. A lot of people like the design, so that is obviously going to add a chunk onto the price of the knife. I get that, but I just wish it wasn't D2. I don't like paying $80, $84 for D2. I'm not a fan of that. So, yeah, kind of in a little muck there. But now this version here with the S35 and the titanium, I do like that. It all comes down to whether or not you're going to be okay with that break-in period. If you're okay with a little bit of the slap here, $150 for S35 and titanium and a design from a designer like this. Yeah, I'm not opposed to that. I don't hate it. You just gotta, get used to the break-in period. I really do wish, though, this would have had a liner lock instead of a frame lock. I would have been a much bigger fan of this knife had it had the liner lock like it has on the G10 version. And ideally, what I would love to see, what I would be 100% in on buying, and it would be like a home run for me, to take this model here, put some S35 or M390, a little more premium blade steel, get some marble carbon fiber, and yeah, I'm all in on a version like this. I really do prefer this version. I love the liner lock. I love the blade shape. $80 for D2 is just a little too high for me, though. But in terms of overall design, in terms of action and ergos, they're both decent. They're both respectable, and they're both one that I don't think you would be upset with. It just all comes down to if you're okay with materials at the price point and everything you saw in this review. So that's that, guys. Let me know what you think of these two. I do think they're very interesting designs, and I really enjoy the designs that are coming out of Poltergeist Works. I think they're doing a fantastic job, and I think overall Boker did a pretty decent job with this run. I obviously would just like to see a little more premium version of this guy right here, because I would be all over that. Really big fan of this one, and the titanium version is okay as well. So with that being said, guys, let me know what you think of this review. Let me know what you think of these knives. Really hope you enjoyed this one. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and until the next one, I'm out.